One man had a Harvard degree and ran part of a Wall Street bank. The other swept floors for a living. One died bankrupt. The other died with a fortune that stunned his whole town. And it was the janitor who died rich. The reason is one word, not the word you think. Let me show you. Picture a small town in Vermont, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where the snow piles against the porches all winter, and where one old man walked into the same coffee shop every morning wearing a coat held together with a safety pin. His name was Ronald Read. He pumped gas. He swept floors at the local J.C. Penney. For most of his life, he never earned more than minimum wage. When his coat tore, he pinned it shut. When his car broke down, he fixed it himself and kept driving it. Nobody in that town would have guessed there was anything remarkable about him. He looked like exactly what he was, a quiet man who worked with his hands. And then, in the summer of 2014, Ronald Read died. He was 92. That should have been the end of it. A modest life, a small funeral, a name that fades. But when the lawyer opened his will, the whole town went quiet. Because Ronald Read, the janitor, the gas station attendant, the man in the safety pin coat, had left behind more than $8 million. No lottery ticket, no secret inheritance, no rich uncle who died, just a janitor with $8 million. Now there is a single word that explains how that happened. One word, and I promise you, it is not the word you are thinking right now. Hold on to that. We will get there. Because here is the strange part. Around the very same time Ronald Read's fortune was being signed over to a hospital and a library, another man was in the news, a Harvard graduate, a top executive at one of the biggest banks in the world, a man who, on paper, was everything Ronald Read was not. And that man had just gone bankrupt, lost the mansion, lost the money, lost all of it. A janitor died rich, a Harvard millionaire died broke. And almost everything you have been taught about money cannot explain why. This is not a story about a number. This is not a story about a clever stock pick. This is not a story about being born a genius. This is a story about the biggest mistake you are probably making with your money right now, and you cannot even feel it happening. That mistake is a lie so ordinary that almost everyone believes it. And it goes like this: that a big income will make you rich. A writer named Morgan Housel took that lie apart in a book called The Psychology of Money. And over the next 20 minutes, you are going to start seeing your own paycheck very differently. Stay with me. Let's start with the janitor. Ronald Read worked at a gas station for 25 years. Then he swept floors at a department store for another 17. Add it up, and that's a 42-year career of low-wage, hands-on, nobody writes a book about it work. He lived in a small 2-bedroom house he bought for $12,000. He cut his own firewood. He clipped coupons. The people who knew him assumed reasonably that he had almost nothing. So where did $8 million come from? Here is the entire secret. Ready? He saved a little. He bought shares of solid, boring companies, the kind that make things people always need. And then he did the hardest thing in the world. He did nothing. He held those shares for decades. He didn't sell when the market crashed. He didn't panic when the news got loud. He just let the years pile up, the way the Vermont snow piled up against his porch. That's it. That's the whole story. A small income, a high savings rate, and an almost inhuman amount of patience. You have walked past 100 Ronald Reads. You just never knew it, because real wealth, the kind that lasts, almost never looks like wealth. Pay attention to this, because it's about to become the most important idea in this video. Now let's meet the other man. His name was Richard Fuscone. And Richard was everything you are taught to want to be. He went to Harvard. He climbed to the top of Merrill Lynch, one of the most powerful banks in America. He was so successful, so early, that he retired in his 40s to enjoy the good life. A business magazine once put him on a list of the brightest young executives in the country. His former boss praised his judgment, his integrity, his savvy. And Richard spent like a man who believed the good times would never end. In the mid-2000s, he borrowed heavily to expand a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, 18,000 square feet, 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 swimming pools, 7 garages. A house so expensive it cost more than $90,000 a month just to maintain. Guests remembered dancing on a glass cover stretched over the indoor pool. It looked like wealth. It photographed like wealth. It was not wealth. Because in 2008, the financial crisis hit, and the man with the Harvard degree and the corner office and the 11 bathrooms had built his entire life on borrowed money. When the markets fell, the debt did not care about his resume. He stood in front of a bankruptcy judge and said 5 words that should stop you cold. I currently have no income. His Palm Beach house went first, then the Greenwich Mansion, the glass-covered pool, the 7 garages, all of it, was sold at a foreclosure auction for 75% less than it was worth. Here's what most people miss. Richard Fuscone was not stupid. He was brilliant. He understood markets at a level Ronald Read never could. The gap in education between these two men was enormous, and it ran entirely in Richard's favor, and it did not matter. The janitor died with $8 million. The Harvard executive died broke. So how is that possible? It comes down to one distinction almost nobody makes. There is a difference between being rich and being wealthy. And the day you understand it is the day your money starts to change. Rich is the stuff you can see, the leased sports car, the big house, the watch, the suit, the corner office. Rich is income on display. It is money that has already been spent to prove to people that you have money. Wealthy is the opposite. Wealthy is the money you do not see because it hasn't been spent yet. It's the car not bought, the upgrade turned down. It is income quietly turned into savings and then left alone long enough to grow. Wealthy is invisible by definition. The moment you spend it to look wealthy, it stops being wealth. Richard Fuscone was rich, spectacularly rich. You could see it from the street. Ronald Read was wealthy, and you could not see it at all until the day they read his will. And this is the lie we started with. You have been taught that the road to getting rich is to earn more, chase the bigger salary, the promotion, the raise. But a bigger income, all by itself, only buys you the chance to become Richard Fuscone, to look the part and lose the plot. Income is not the thing that makes you wealthy. Something else does that, and we are getting closer to the word. Before we go further, let me ask you something, and be honest, just with yourself. When you imagine being rich, what do you actually picture? The house, the car, the number in the account you could finally show people? Most of us picture the things we'd put on display. That's the lie, working on you in real time. If this is landing, do me one small favor. Subscribe so the next part finds you. Because what's coming is where this stops being a story about two strangers and starts being about your money. And in the comments, tell me the first thing you'd buy if you woke up rich tomorrow. I read them. I'm curious what we reach for. Now, back to the word. So far, this has been a story about two ordinary lives, a janitor, a banker, personal stakes. But the lie we're taking apart doesn't stop at mansions and foreclosures. Push it far enough, and it stops being about money at all. It becomes about survival. Let me show you why. His name was Jesse Livermore, and in his time, he was the most famous trader who ever lived. In the autumn of 1929, the American stock market collapsed. It was the worst financial day the country had ever seen. Fortunes built over lifetimes vanished in hours. Men who were millionaires at breakfast were ruined by dinner. The panic was so complete it would help drag the entire world into the Great Depression. And on that day, the single worst day Wall Street had ever known, Jesse Livermore went home and told his family he had just made around $100 million. Sit with that for a second. $100 million. In 1929. While almost everyone else was being wiped out, Livermore had bet against the market, and the crash made him one of the richest men alive. He was a genius. Not the boring, patient kind like Ronald Read, the dazzling kind, the kind they put on the front page. So here's a question worth asking. What happens to a man who, on the worst day in financial history, makes $100 million? You'd think the answer is simple. He wins, he's set, he never worries again. But it gets stranger, because 4 years later, Jesse Livermore had lost all of it, every dollar. He kept making wilder and wilder bets, chasing the high of that one impossible afternoon, and the market that had crowned him turned around and took everything back. By 1934, he was bankrupt, and some years later, broken and unable to climb back, Jesse Livermore took his own life. Now, why am I telling you this? Because Livermore is the proof that the lie runs deeper than income. The man made the greatest fortune in the world in a single afternoon. If a big number were the answer, his story ends on a yacht, not in tragedy, but a big number was never the answer. Livermore had everything except one thing. He never knew what enough was. And here's the part nobody tells you. That same missing piece, the inability to ever say enough, is quietly at work in your own life right now. You just call it by friendlier names. You call it a goal, you call it ambition, you call it the next level. Think about your own paycheck for a second. The first real raise you ever got. Remember how it felt? Like everything was about to get easier. And did it? Or did your spending quietly rise to meet the new number, until the bigger paycheck felt exactly as tight as the smaller one? That's called lifestyle creep. And it is the most patient predator in your financial life. Every time your income climbs, the finish line politely steps a little further away. So you run faster, and you never arrive. You earn more and feel the same. This is not a story about greedy billionaires. This is not a story about Wall Street. This is not a story that happens to other people. This is the quiet machinery running in the background of an ordinary life, yours included. Ronald Read knew what enough was. He drove the same car until it gave out. He kept the safety pin coat. Somewhere along the way, he simply decided that his life did not need to get more expensive every single year. And that one decision, boring, invisible, almost embarrassing, is the thing that let his money survive long enough to become $8 million. Richard Fuscone never knew what enough was. Neither did Jesse Livermore. One lost a mansion, one lost his life. Both already had far more than they needed and reached for more anyway. So let's add it up honestly. Being smart wasn't enough. Fuscone was brilliant. A high income wasn't enough. He had one for years. Even a once-in-history windfall wasn't enough. Livermore is the proof. Intelligence, income, $100 million miracle. None of it lasts on its own. So what does? What did the quiet janitor have that the genius and the executive did not? We have circled this word for 20 minutes. It's time, finally, to say it. The word is time. That's it. After everything, the janitor, the banker, the genius who lost a fortune in 4 years, the answer is the most ordinary word in the language, time. I told you it would not be the word you were expecting. You were probably waiting for discipline or intelligence or some clever strategy nobody else knows. No. The thing that separates wealth that lasts from wealth that disappears is almost insultingly simple. It is how long you let your money sit and grow without touching it. To show you what that really means, let me take you to the most famous investor who has ever lived, Warren Buffett. Buffett is worth, depending on the day, well over $100 billion. And here is the fact that should rearrange your entire idea of how money works. Morgan Housel ran the numbers and found that more than $81 billion of Buffett's fortune came after his 65th birthday. Let that land. The overwhelming majority of the richest investors' wealth was built at an age when most people have already stopped working. Here is the thought experiment that makes it undeniable. Imagine Buffett had started investing at 30 instead of as a child, and retired at 60 to play golf, but earned the exact same returns the whole way. How rich would he be? Not 80 billion, not even 1 billion, about $12 million, a perfectly nice sum, but you would have never heard his name. His skill is investing. His secret is time. The very same returns, given a few more decades to compound. are the entire difference between a quiet retirement and the greatest fortune in financial history. If no one ever taught you this, that is exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe, and you'll never be the last to find out, because the next part is the one that hurts. Now watch what happens next. You might be thinking, fine, but Buffett is a once-in-a-century genius. Maybe he's simply the best who ever lived. He is not by the numbers. There was a man named Jim Simons who ran the most successful investment fund in history. Buffett grew his money at about 22% a year. Extraordinary. But Simons did it at 66% a year, 3 times Buffett's rate, a record so far beyond everyone else that no one has come close. By raw skill, Simons wasn't just better than Buffett. He was from another planet. And yet, when Housel compared the two, Simons was worth around $21 billion. Buffett, 4 times more. The greater genius, with triple the returns, ended up a fraction as rich. How? You already know the word. Simons didn't find his stride until he was 50. Buffett had been compounding since he was a child. The genius had the better returns. The other man had more time, and time won. It wasn't even close. There's one more thing, and it's the part that should stay with you long after this video ends. When Buffett was young, he had a third partner, not Charlie Munger, a third man named Rick Guerin. And by every account, Rick was just as sharp as the other two. The same eye, the same instincts. He should be a household name today. But Rick was in a hurry. He wanted to be rich, and he wanted it now. So he borrowed money to speed things up. And then, in the brutal downturn of the early 1970s, the market fell by nearly 70%. Rick got margin calls he could not cover. To survive, he was forced to sell his shares to Buffett for under $40 each. Those same shares are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars apiece today. Years later, someone asked Buffett whatever happened to Rick. His answer is the entire lesson in a single breath. Charlie and I always knew we would get rich, he said. We were never in a hurry. Rick was just as smart as us, but he was in a hurry. That's it. That is the whole distance between a legend and a footnote. Not brains, not skill, not bad luck. Hurry. And being in a hurry is the most human thing in the world. You feel it every time you check your account and wish the number were bigger today. Every time a friend's quick win makes your slow, boring, sensible plan feel foolish. The entire world is built to make you rush. Faster returns, faster riches, faster proof that you've made it. And rushing is the surest way to end up as Rick, not as Warren. So let me leave you with 3 things. Keep them. First, the truth we came here for. Wealth is not built by a big income, and it is not built by genius. It is built by decent returns multiplied by time. That's the whole formula. A janitor proved it. A Harvard banker disproved it. The math does not care about your resume. Second, and this one is for you, personally. Stop asking the question almost everyone asks. Stop asking, how much can I earn? Start asking the question Buffett's entire life answers. What is the best return I can keep for the longest time without ever blowing it up? Change that one question, and you change everything that comes after it. And third, the one I most want you to feel. Ronald Read was not richer than Richard Fuscone because he earned more. He earned almost nothing. He was richer because he found a small thing that worked, and then he refused to interrupt it for decades. That is all wealth has ever been, a quiet thing, left alone for a long time. Here is what that means for you. You already have the one ingredient Warren Buffett had. You are standing inside it right now. It's called time. And every single day, you spend rushing, chasing the bigger number, the faster win, the thing that finally proves you've made it. You are handing that ingredient away, exactly the way Rick did. So I'll ask you straight, and I want you to be honest in the comments. Are you living like Ronald Read, patient, quiet, at peace with enough? Or are you living like Rick, smart, capable, and in a hurry? Tell me below. I read every one. Because in the end, the richest person is not the one who makes the most. It's the one who is willing to wait.